Hey, this is Mollie McGlocklin, founder of Sleep is a Skill. And if you're looking to be in better health and lose weight, and in this case, certainly with myself, sleep better, then you should be listening to the Hack to Life podcast with my good friend, Joel Evans.
All right, I'm here with Mollie McGlocklin. She's the founder of Sleep is a Skill company that optimizes people's sleep through a unique blend of technology, accountability, and behavioral change. Mollie, welcome to the show.
Joel, thank you so much for having me. I know we had the opportunity to meet in person a while back and excited to be reunited on here.
Yeah, likewise. You are my first sleep expert ever to have on the show. I don't know why. This will be like my 70th something episode. I've never had a sleep expert, so I'm really excited to have you on and dive deep into this topic.
Well, I am so excited to be here, and I'm definitely on a mission to transform the conversation around sleep. So happy to speak to it on your show.
Yeah. So I'm curious, why are you so passionate about sleep? Like, what? Yeah. Why? Like,
why?
Like, don't we just, Mollie? Don't we just go to sleep? Like, that's just
yes.
it. Like,
of all
why
the
is
things
sleep
you
such
do,
a big deal? Yeah.
One of the things not to think about. Yeah, totally. Yes. Well, a great question, because it actually really does sort of kind of paint more of the why that I have this obsession. Everything I'll be speaking about today, kind of more grounded in the reasoning for that. And it was really because at my lowest point in my adult life was linked up around sleep. So what that looked like was I was a serial entrepreneur in Manhattan, kind of burning the candle at both ends, really stressed out to the max, but just had a lot of labels around my sleep at that time. That I'm a short sleeper, I'm a poor sleeper, I'm a night owl, it's in my genes, it's just the way it is, like you'll sleep when you're dead. All of those sort of kind of labels, philosophies, or just thinkings on sleep were of a particular fixed nature. That's just kind of how it is, got to survive it. And it wasn't until I went through my own period of insomnia while traveling internationally that everything sort of changed. I went to, it was my rock bottom moment in my life. And clearly that doesn't come out of a vacuum. It's like, you're doing all of these things that are just not working. And the body will certainly let you know with certain symptoms. And one of my symptoms was around, I can't sleep. That was sort of the internal dialogue. And it felt like I was losing my mind. Like it was just such a place to be in. That felt so disempowering. And from that place, it really sent me down the rabbit hole on understanding how I could, one, solve this problem. Because at my lowest point, I went to the doctors in Croatia and then left with their version of Ambien. And in that moment, it was like, okay, I've got to get at the source of this. And I have to really be, an advocate for myself in this situation and really understand more. So went down the rabbit hole, learned more circadian rhythm entrainment, chronobiology, really the science of time, and became so fascinated, particularly as I began to be able to get up under my sleep, be able to restore my sleep. And this really took a period of time. We had to actually fly back to the United States because it was just so I couldn't do anything without getting that sleep. It was wild. And so from that place, really quantifiably restoring my sleep, actually being able to, from a measurable perspective, have not only the type of sleep that I was having before, which, as I shared, was not that great, it was actually then moving to this whole new level of sleep that I just didn't even think was possible for myself because I had all those labels. And really part of the source point of that was shifting my life as a whole and the habits and the things that I was taking on, really turning those upside down to bring about more workability, alignment with, these rhythms and why they matter. And so from that place, just transform my own sleep and couldn't stop talking about it. So I started working with people really organically, kind of one-on-one, huge level of empathy from that at that time of, just being able to see how painful it can be when you really can't get that sleep or it's insufficient or poor quality. And so it grew to small groups. Now we have one-on-one kind of 90-day packages and different courses, weekly podcasts, weekly newsletter, kind of sleep assessments. A whole world kind of got created out of that. And from that place, we're now in hotels. We work with high performers. It's just a really exciting time, I think, in the world of sleep optimization. And, so for anyone listening that tunes into a sleep-related podcast, even if your sleep feels okay or you're really struggling or anywhere in between, there's a lot of things we can do to make a difference with it.
That is so cool. I mean, so for you had all these things going on, stressed out of your mind. I think especially with like women, I coach a lot of people, and you're hormones, this
Yes.
always comes up, and all these things coming up, and burnout and stress, and then PCOS and whatever the symptoms manifest in. And for you had all these crazy things going on, and the one thing you fixed was sleep, and that dialed in the rest of your life.
Yes, it was like, that great book, Power of Habit, where they talk about like a keystone habit or any of those philosophies around shifting certain things in your life. This was like my keystone habit that really changed the game. And I really make the argument that sleep in and of itself for all of us can really act as that one foundational piece by which all these other things can get layered on top of. But I really, truly believe that more and more, and from a measurable standpoint, more and more studies are coming out around how just insidious, sleep deprivation can be in our lives, and how much it can just, ripple into virtually every area. Really struggle to find an area that it doesn't hit. So from that place, if you're really looking to take on your health and well-being in any perspective, this can be that foundational part of the puzzle.
Yeah. And I'm curious, because before we jumped on, you were talking that, you live in Vegas, and, you
Yes.
actually coach and work with a lot of poker players. I mean, these people are they're almost like, they're really like athletes. Like they have to be like, they're probably, I mean, now it's become, these guys aren't just like guys that stay up late and like, just it's the game. They're like, kids playing a game. Like these guys are probably taking like brain octane. They're taking ketone supplements. Now it's become more of like a sport, right? So you're working with like some of these high-end people. It's like, why? I'm curious, like, why are they seeking you? What are they starting to realize? Like, like I need to dial this in. This is an issue.
Well, okay. So even to hone in on poker players, because it is a nice avatar to look at from a perspective that they are uniquely often in an environment that is designed wholly to confuse you on what time it is, to cut off any elements of external rhythms of nature, if you will. And that's really a lot of conscious effort has gone into the environment that they're in for that. And often they can almost fall into the group of kind of shift workers, and not even consistent shift workers, which we'd often like to see, but it's like a rolling shift or totally sporadic shifts, because they might be playing a tournament that starts at 5 p.m. one week, and the next week it's 10 a.m. and the next, and then maybe they have a cash game that goes all throughout the night. Like there's so much variance there. And so from that perspective, it really behooves them, because they're looking for any edge that they can personally bring to the table that's outside of what, is in the hands. So from that place, then sleep suddenly becomes a really important element. And if they're sitting at a table and the entire goal is to be cognitively intact and making important decisions that can, for some of these guys and women, can result in a huge, financial gain or loss, for them to dial in on something that can keep them alert throughout those sometimes 12-hour stretches or what have you, it can just make all the difference. So they're starting to realize that. And sometimes they're on the other side of different kind of quick fixes. Like maybe they were taking sleeping pills or supplements, or they've got uppers, they've got downers. There's nicotine gum. There's maybe actual nicotine. There's drinking. And not that all of them are doing that, especially our high performers, because to your point, the athletic perspective. But there might be kind of coping mechanisms to deal with the tilt that you're really getting. You might get really high levels of adrenaline and and stressors, either positively, like, yay, we just won, or negatively, no, we didn't. So they can, and they're also really attuned to kind of this often maybe biohacker conversation or what have you, that they have a say in making a lot of this difference. So they're willing to spend the time, energy, and effort on it.
Yeah, very cool. All right, what is, and this is just in general because again, you see the spectrum from everybody. You see the high end, either poker player, athlete, to just maybe the mom next door, right? Like, what is the biggest mistake that you think most people are making when it comes to their sleep?
Yeah, great question. I think so. It does depend on the group, but I think by and large, there can be this conversation that or a missing or a lack of clarity around even the reason we name this company, which is called Sleep is a Skill, that this is a skill set in our modern society. And that's really the argument that we're making, is that versus just having it from, well, it's, it's a primal thing. It's ingrained. You don't have to think about it that much. Like, instead to take on this, adopt this perspective that there's so much that we can do to make this difference. And then from that place, then you can step outside of a lot of your narrative. So if it's, well, I'm a night owl, well, I'm an early bird, well, I'm this, I'm that. Then from that place, you can actually make a difference over the long term. And I think that is one of the most important mindset shifts, because then once people are in that they say, okay, you're all right, fine. What can I do to make a difference? Then they're willing to actually often take the steps, because with sleep, it often takes multiple days and days and days in a row to really start to, over time, see some of these shifts measurably. So it does take that commitment and a strong why that you're doing the thing you're doing.
Yeah, I love that you said that. That was one of my questions, right? You named the company "Sleep is a Skill," and again, we just think, yeah, whatever. I go to sleep, and
Right.
that's what happens. But it's really interesting you said that, because I'm working with a pretty high end coach for my physique, and you know what
Yeah.
he said to me? He said, because in his questionnaire he says, like, well, how many hours of sleep are you getting? What time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up? And I've really recently just switched my whole schedule up, and I'm getting up a lot of times at like 4:30 at the latest in the morning, and he wrote to me, he's like, absolutely not. You have to get 8 hours of sleep. And I was like, do I though? But it's to your point, right? It's that intention that you're setting, the whole mindset. Because I fall into that trap too of like, I don't need that much. Like 6 hours, 7 hours is good enough.
Yes. So absolutely. And I love that your coach did that. And, because I think that that's part of it, is the realization that this is a big, there's a puzzle at play here, often with many of the hits of attention on our, on us individually, day in and day out. So from that place, that it does actually take our own kind of sitting and designing a schedule, the same way we might plan out, our nutrition plans, our workout plans, all those sort of things. We want to have a clear kind of sleep plan in the face of all of the things that are vying for our attention, and not all of us are doing that. And I do think that's an exciting time as it relates to sleep trackers, because suddenly this is getting a lot more people in the conversation, and they can kind of compare and gamify. And, for some people, it might not be as ideal to go down the tracking rabbit hole. But for those that are in a place that they're exploring that, then it can really be fantastic, because it can start to fuel that fire, that want to really look in an area that we might not have prioritized.
Yeah, and speaking of trackers, is there a tracker that you like? We have the Oura Ring, the BioStrap. I just recently got a BioStrap, and so I'm messing with that. But yeah, is there one that you like more than the other, or do you find that tech is still in its infancy, or I don't know? What are your thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. Well, one, great. Love to hear your thoughts on BioStrap. The guys over at BioStrap are awesome. We had them on the podcast. Yeah, really great. And we do right now have, so we'll have a lot of clients that will come through, and they might have just about every tracker, sometimes wearing them all at once, quite literally, and sometimes even very specialized ones. And, so we'll get some characters, but we encourage awareness through data, because I think it can be a really fantastic, almost self-development tool when you get connected to really what's going on. As of right now, at Sleep is a Skill, we have every client wearing the Aura Ring, but often they might be also kind of cross comparing with the Whoop, with the BioStrap, with Apple, and sometimes in the past more Dream Band and other things.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that you can play with, but we do like the simplicity right now for Aura Ring, and there's a lot that's changing, like month to month. So this could very well shift in the future, but the ease of use for Oura Ring and the user interface, and it kind of hits across the board. We have people that are in their 20s wearing these, in their 80s wearing these, and just seems it has that stickiness as far as the kind of behavioral shift of wearing those and just ease of understanding. But as far as are they in their infancy, yes. Yes and no, I guess you could say, because one, they're fantastic, the quantum leaps that we've made in such a short period of time, and there's just knowing that there are some limitations from a consumer grade piece of equipment. So any hand and wrist based trackers that are out there at the moment, still one of the least accurate pieces of data on them are the sleep stage classifications. So the deep and the REM and the light, can be interesting, but you will, and I've seen the clients do this, they'll have like kind of columns of what Whoop's giving them, BioStrap's giving them, what's, Apple, with Fitbit, all the things, and they'll go nuts. They'll try to compare, and this one gives me, an hour and a half of deep sleep. This one gives me 20 minutes of REM. They don't compute. So just knowing that they each have their own unique algorithm, and within that, you might be able to see some basic pan out type trends, but more the information that we're kind of playing with are related to some of those kind of readiness indicators. So heart rate throughout the course of the night, HRV in particular, so that metric of recovery and really seeing many facets of recovery in that one metric, and then respiratory rate, body temperature, blood oxygen, things of that nature. And then at times we'll go even deeper for people depending on what they're dealing with continuous glucose monitors, and how much that can actually play a role with sleep, as well as the Leaf and Leaf is continuous HRV tracker, among other things.
Yeah, really, really cool. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, because I think sometimes I look at the data too, and I just like it for information in general, but I try not to get too bogged down and like, oh, well, like it looks like my REM sleep wasn't as good, but my deep was. I just try to look at it like, how much time was I in bed in general? Were my, how long did it take me to fall asleep? HRV, I'm always looking at, like you said, overall readiness, my breathing, heart rate, all that kind of stuff. But I'm not too focused in the sense, like, it's hard to say, like, oh, yeah, because, and then just in general, how do I feel? Do I feel refreshed? Do I feel, ready to go?
Right. Absolutely. I think it's important to do that subjective check. And a lot of them are starting to add in more of the capabilities of sort of journaling within them, so that you can add in a bit more of that subjective check. And then also I have seen when it's important for people to kind of take a little bit of a data fast, if you will, for a period of time, so that they are kind of checking out from if they're being really not being informed only, but also then being impacted, and sometimes negatively by that information. Then sometimes they can take a little bit of a time off, get recalibrated, and then go back into getting some of that awareness. I've also seen some people put onto more like airplane mode, and then they're only updating the data every, say, 5 or 6 days, so that each day to day they're not getting kind of messed with, but then they're still seeing those trends and can course correct from there.
Yeah, cool. You mentioned CGM. So I coach a lot of people in weight loss. I'm curious, why is sleep important for weight loss?
Yes, great question. So huge for weight loss. And we actually did a kind of small, informal look through levels, continuous glucose monitors, and Oura Ring users, and overlaid the data and got to see, one, just from a sleep quality perspective, and of course how this snowballs into glucose. But from that place, what would happen we would see as people are eating later into the night, and resulting in sort of that more instability in their glucose, that they were having more wake ups throughout the course of the night, which is really quite fascinating. And some of the theories being that there could be that drop in glucose and resulting in sort of adrenaline and cortisol spike. And then not only are you awake, just kind of like short-term wake ups, but it's kind of that awake that you're really now awake, because now you got the kind of surging of, bodily response. So that can be a fascinating thing that disrupts that sleep quality, or making it harder to fall asleep in general. So shortening sleep duration. And so from that place, and the next day people are waking up and then had a night of poor sleep. So now their glucose is at a resting level, on a higher side of things. So in certain studies, we'll see that, even 1 or 2 nights of sleep deprivation seems to result in some studies, jumping, 25% or more, in just that resting glucose level. So then, of course, that has a snowball effect of seeking out sort of quick energy sources, and we're looking for the kind of junky food or poor choices that we might not normally make. And so, of course, that can have a poor effect and keep on with the cycle, because that affects the quality of that sleep. So that is, just one of those reasons, but it's also a bigger, conversation at hand from a hormonal balance perspective, how that can play a role in weight loss and weight maintenance. So it's just a big, big topic that they're very interconnected.
So it's important, we can say, yeah.
Yes.
All right. I wanted to ask you, and it's funny because a friend of mine just texted me. He's like, Joel, I need help. I need help with my sleep. Like,
Oh my God, yes.
Tell me something that I need to take. I mean, and there's so many things you can say. Well, you probably need to do some fear journaling. But anyways, so
Yeah.
what about supplements? Are there any like top 1 to 3 supplements or anything that jumps out to you that really move the needle for most people, or that even you yourself take?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. And I absolutely appreciate you sharing about your friend too, because I get a lot of those questions. And so
They want the quick fix, right? Like,
They
just
want
give
the
me
quick-
this
and-
one thing. And I'm like, how do I
Yes.
answer this, right?
And listen, I
Go
often
see
use myself.
Molly.
Yes, I often use myself as an example of what not to do, because when I was going through what I was going through with my sleep, it was absolutely that. It was, I'm desperate. Give me something to make this stop. So I really get it. So it's not meaning to, short circuit that approach, because that makes a lot of sense. But I do think that the behavioral shifts are so crucial and almost just a waste of time, energy, money, all the things until then. Because once you get the behavioral side of the things from that pyramid perspective, you're attacking all of those. Then on the top of the pyramid, then you can start adding in some of these supplements, and actually beginning to see, do they work? Or are they making a difference for you or not? And ideally testing. So, really bringing in that testing philosophy before just arbitrarily laying in some of these things. Because I think some people forget that sometimes supplements can even negatively impact, if we're not aware of what we're taking and why, and the timing and all that. But having said all that, assuming we're doing that and we're looking into supplements, then certainly some of the things that you probably heard, but just are really important to point out. The magnesium topic is a big one. And
you have a form that you like, or you gravitate to more, that you've seen just with your clients or even yourself, that
yeah.
you like?
Yeah, absolutely. So magnesium glycinate is one that we more tend to lean into. And then there's, of course, threonate can be another one. But those can also be really, really nice for that evening sort of wind down, ensuring that we're not having that delayed cortisol pulse and helping people to kind of calm. It's known as the calming mineral, in the evening time. So doing that. But also you can look into some other things, because vitamin D, of course, is so crucial for sleep. But we also want to look into, can we get that from the sun? Can we get that naturally? And so that can be really, and that's absolutely a really mandate for getting great sleep, is getting that sunlight at the right times, and getting that darkness at the right times. And, that can be one of the things we can possibly speak to too, is that circadian rhythm entrainment, because that can just be so crucial. And finally, I will say, I know people talk about this one quite a lot of being melatonin. Now, I'm not necessarily putting this in the third rung as like what you need to have in there, but just to speak to it, because I know I get so many questions about it. And I can say that there certainly can be times. So there's two camps. Some people will be in the camp of mega high dosing melatonin. And so there's theories around that one. Also some interesting studies around, kind of cancer patients and benefits received there, because melatonin it's an interesting one because it's not just a hormone, but it's also an antioxidant. So, there's a lot of benefits there. But I would really encourage us to make our own melatonin, which can really, truly have a strategy behind the how of that. But I will put in, so I am more in the camp of, unless we're dealing with certain particular sleep disorders or things that are more acute, that melatonin is one of the last supplements that we might go to for that sort of conversation that can really systemically make a difference. But at the same time, it can be helpful for things like jet lag, shift workers, if you're trying to retrain your circadian rhythm, or if you're dealing sometimes even with acute health issues, that can be something on a short term that you could bring in.
Love that. Really quick on melatonin, I'm curious and again, every client's going to be the bio-individuality that you're going to work with, but I've always thought with my clients not to have them on these mega doses, and I see a lot of these pills come in like 6 milligram forms. I like the droppers in that you can kind of titrate even 0.5 milligrams or just smaller amounts, especially if you're just taking on a regular basis. But then, of course, there's times, I think, to pulse it to go higher. I don't know. What are your thoughts and from the research that you've seen?
Yeah, one, often leaning towards the, sublingual kind of way administering and dosing. I think that can have a lot of benefits, but also particularly what you're saying of being able to lean into the lower dosage amount. I think that's really important. I've even seen clients, it's sometimes almost being like a psychological kind of connection that they, might wake up in the middle of the night, they can't go back to sleep, and then being able to have not like a full dose, but a small dose, even from a standpoint of this will now help me, almost that placebo effect. And I'm not saying that that's always the case, but I'm just saying that sometimes even being able to just dose a little bit of that, it seems to make a difference for some.
Yeah, cool. You're a biohacker and you like to play with tech. What's some cool or just neat tech that you're seeing and that you're using and with your clients that you really like?
Yeah. So we do have a lot of people wearing the Leaf, LIEF, and that's a continuous HRV tracker, which is really interesting because now it is more of a less of a kind of common wearable because it does take, you have to put on kind of almost like medical grade stickers to wear it. And there are some other kind of HRV companies that are on the move and some that are even, can't speak about this particulars quite yet, but they're coming and exciting. So I think that's going to be really a space that could be really disrupted very soon of how to actually make sense of daytime HRV trackers. Because right now, anytime we're talking about HRV, most of us are talking about nocturnal HRV. And so that's one type of HRV reading while you're sleeping, but it's devoid of a lot of the other pieces of noise that might be present with daytime HRV. And noise being like, if you're eating a meal, that's going to bring down your HRV. If you're talking, that's going to bring down your HRV. The way you're standing, if you're slouching, I mean, so many things. And whereas some of these different pieces of tech can start to pull out or help you make sense in the face of that, of things that might be at play or sending you into a real stress response, but then also kind of will in real time be helping you to change your behavior, because one of the best access points to shifting your HRV is through your breath. And so like the Leaf will buzz you when you're going into a real heavy stress state, like a red zone. And then it will help you shift your breathing in the moment, which can be really valuable. Like I've seen clients do something like that and they, have to have a big conversation with someone or, a coworker or whatever. And in prep for that, they saw that even just the anticipation anticipation of that conversation was stressing them out. So that actually had them before the conversation do some of this breath work training, and then you can color code it, go from red to blue, and suddenly it's like, oh wait, I do have a say in my nervous system response. And so much of sleep is that. So it's, often it's not just that, but it's often a big part is this inability to kind of put the brakes on our stress response, particularly going into the evening or throughout the course of the evening. So the more that we can train ourselves to do that throughout the course of the day and kind of normalize those hormonal patterns of kind of that cortisol and melatonin interplay, the better.
Yeah, wow. I love that you said it because, like you said, even with your own experience, it wasn't like you just got there. It was a culmination of events that led you there. And just like us, I think we get to sleep or we think about sleep. It's like, all right, well, it's nighttime and this is what I'm thinking about right now in this very moment. I'm going to bed and I can't sleep. And it's like, actually, it probably started right in the moment you woke up and led to now. So that's so cool that you said. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I love the way you put it too, because that's actually one of the things that we're often pointing to is that we're really trying to turn upside down this topic of sleep. Because often if you are having issues with your sleep, you Google, help me sleep. And then you might get like this generic sort of sleep hygiene advice and take the TV out, use lavender, blah, blah, blah. And I think that instead of attacking the evenings, then what if we were to really see where the source point of it often is to your point, the moment we wake up. So often nowadays, the moment we wake up, it's instead of getting outside and getting this morning sunlight, which, and that's a whole other podcast in and of itself of the why and the physics of the importance for that. But so many of us are doing the exact opposite and beginning in that kind of sympathetic response system from the very first start of our day, and then kind of getting stuck in that mechanism and not being able to hit the brakes. So the more we can interrupt that, and it does not often happen, overnight, but the moment to moment interruptions help retrain us that yes, we do actually have a say, and that plays out in the evening.
Very neat. Love it. I know we're running up on the hour, and so we're going to have to probably do a round two. It's okay.
Right? I know.
I'm curious, what exciting projects are you working on right now? Anything coming out soon?
Yeah. So really exciting. So as far as sleep as a skill, we're really aiming to get as much content out as possible and information for people, no matter where they might be on their sleep. So we do, we're on 180 third weekly newsletter. So that goes out every Monday, giving as much sleep information as possible, lots of sleep experiments, cool, sleep trackers or products or techniques that people are doing, but then measuring along the way. And so with the newsletter, we're continuing to build on that. We do the weekly podcast, but in alignment with that, now we've partnered with a few different companies that we're helping to get content out through their platforms to further spread this message of really transforming this conversation around sleep. So now we're in hotels, work with different big brands. We're connected with Chili Tech, and we're also connecting newly with kind of more of a skin-based line. It's international, that promoting the elements of sleep and how that helps with kind of cellular repair. So in those different directions, but then we're also launching a more in-depth small group kind of course, if you will, that helps, but still brings in, you have to still wear these trackers and, but from a group perspective, have those more observed that way. So that's something we're really excited about, and how kind of we can gamify as a group together our sleep.
Wow. So it doesn't sound like you're up to much then. Okay, good. By the way, Mollie has a great podcast. So if anybody wants, because I know we didn't get to a lot of stuff. If you want to know more about sleep and circadian entrainment, which we didn't even get to, but check out her podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. To that point on circadian rhythm entrainment, I think even just that alone for people can be life changing, because it's absolutely within those systems of it brings about all the things that sleep loves, which is, consistency, regularity, connections to the rhythms of nature, not in a woo woo way, but in a literal biological way of why that's so important. But then extending out into other rhythms, ultradian rhythms, like, for women and their cycles and different things, and how all of these things measurably show up in your sleep results routinely, depending on what stage of life that you might be at. So lots of things that might have been in the blind spot that they would affect sleep are really present. So we aim to help people make sense of that.
Cool. I want to hop into some lightning round questions, but
Yeah.
before I do, anything that I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
Um, No, I think just even having the forum to underscore this message, because I think even if we get across the message that sleep is a skill set that we can start to get curious about it, learn about it. I think that begins this process of suddenly people are more apt to make some of these behavioral shifts, and often they are free and they are something that can just be life changing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well said. All right. You ready for some lightning round questions?
Yes.
All right. If the old you could see the new you, what would the new you say?
Ah, what would the old me say?
What would the new you say to your old self?
Oh, new me to old self. Okay. So new me would say to old me, just really trust in the process, slow down. I think, and it's just almost cliche at this point for so many of us, but I
Yeah.
think that that's really the simplicity is just that's all we need to really do.
It's so true. It's one of the hardest things to do. Yeah. To
Yes.
trust
Yes.
that you're doing the right thing and that yeah, just trust the process. All good things will
Yes.
keep coming, right? What are some choices that you made that you think made you who you are today?
Well, on the topic of sleep, even taking the Ambien when I got prescribed it, and in that moment feeling shameful about it, and oh my God, what a mess! I can't even, X, Y, Z, all this internal dialogue. But I think that actually was so important, that period of time, to kind of go through and just really have things not work for an extended period of time, and from that place have the motivation, gumption, drive to really share that message, because that process really taught me a lot, and I've had the benefit of working with others around now, and I think it's just so valuable.
Yeah, well said. I mean, your burnout became our benefit, right?
that's,
Really?
that's what we're going for. Yes,
Yeah.
that's the goal. Uh,
I'm curious, you're such a force in the health and wellness world. Like, who inspires you? Who do you follow?
Oh, yeah. Good question. Well, I feel like one who's having quite a moment right now is Andrew Huberman, and I've really enjoyed his podcast. I think, and I've shared a lot of his episodes with others, and people on our newsletter, what have you, will speak to at different points, because I think it's just such a nice opportunity or place to point to that is bringing some high caliber information and kind of latest research, but distilling it in a way that you can really see the why for yourself, that you want to make these changes, because a lot of the things that can come out of it are behavioral based in nature, but we often need a really strong reason for that.
Yeah, great. Yeah, he's doing a lot of he has a lot of the clinical stuff, so it's always great to see some of the things that he's able to do with his lab, right? The Huberman lab.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I'm a big reader. Any books? Are there like a top 1 to 3 books that jump out at you that you'd recommend someone else read that had a lot of impact in your life?
Sure. Um, well, keeping in the theme of sleep, so I think there's just a couple that at this point, if people haven't read, it just makes sense to read. Probably everyone's, or not everyone, but a lot of people might have seen the Why We Sleep book. So that one is really just a great sort of gateway into this world of the really importance of sleep. But then I think another really fascinating one is called Circadian Code by Dr. Sachin Panda, and looking at how the timing of our food can influence our circadian rhythm. And I know we didn't get to speak too much to that today, but certainly that is the whole game of really realizing how we have this 24-hour rhythm. And how so many things can influence it. And one of them very strongly being the times that we eat. And even if it's healthy food, not healthy food, and those can play a role too, but the timing can be such a big deal there. And third is the sleep book. And so that's for people that are dealing with sleep anxiety, or, just kind of over fixation on their sleep but not having real source points of places of action really to make a difference with it. The sleep book can be really a nice approach versus CBTI, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. It brings about ACTI, acceptance commitment therapy for insomnia. And so kind of just a different approach to managing that anxiety.
Awesome. Well, those are great. I love that. I didn't know about the last one either, so I'm glad you.
Oh,
threw that one
good.
out there. That's good. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, very helpful.
Any rituals or hacks that you like to, or practices that you do on a regular basis? I'm curious.
So right now I'm trying to almost actively pull back some of my things because,
Yeah.
that can also be a balance too when you're doing 9 million hacks and isms. Sometimes just the simplicity and peace could be a big one. So I am doing that. But for me, it's no matter where I am on the globe. After my sleep issues, I ended up traveling for 3 years. It's a digital nomad for quite some time in Southeast Asia. And no matter where I find myself on the globe, getting that morning sunlight, often travel with red lights. Then also red therapeutically, but then also red motion lights. So a lot of the lighting is top concern, temperature, getting as cool as possible. But then also throughout the course of the day, supplementing at with particular types of supplements that make sense for you. But then there's so many more things that you can bring in from an individual basis to help support your sleep. So that's almost a longer topic.
Yeah. No, those are great. Those are great. Awesome. Last but not least, Mollie, where can people find you and learn more about you?
Yeah, sleep as a skill is really a great kind of bucket for all the things. So there you can take a sleep assessment, get real-time feedback on your specific sleep, sign up for the newsletter, podcast, or if you're really dealing with your sleep, looking for either one-on-one or small group training.
Awesome. Mollie, thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and so excited to connect more. I know we've only just scratched the surface.